Welcome to Football Today. We're going to do ourselves a little defensive all-pro, and the Jets have fired GM Joe Douglas. I'm Bobby Skinner here with Justin Penik. Justin, the Jets fired Joe Douglas, 30-64 as the GM, no winning seasons. Why didn't they do this with Robert Saleh? Because they took away Joe Douglas's power with Robert Saleh, and the GM doesn't have a ton of say in season anyways. Why did they create themselves another media circus for this?
Yeah, Jordan Schultz, a couple minutes before we started recording this, we're recording this on a Tuesday evening. So while Joe Douglas held the GM title until today, I'm told much of the organization had been overseen by higher-ups over the past month, and it's apparent in moves like with the Davante Adams trade, which many rival executives considered an overpay, which it was, the Hassan Reddick renegotiation, which had stalled before being handled directly by others, and I'm reading between the lines here, but Jordan Schultz went by others. I think Woody Johnson probably stepped in and handle this. So
He did.
Yes.
Woody Johnson has taken over the team like fully.
Yeah, man, this is just I don't need to tell you that it's a mess, but why? Okay, sure, they could have fired Joe Douglas, when they fired Robert Saleh. I honestly don't think that would have mattered all that much in the retrospect of the Jets. I actually appreciate them doing this now so they can get somewhat of a leg up on the new GM search.
Here's the thing though about that part. Unless you're hiring someone that doesn't currently have a job, you don't really get that much of a leg up. Like you can start doing your research. Like we know how this works, Justin. They start when they know they're going to fire their GM. They start the legwork on that, but they can't actually talk to anybody until the season's actually over.
Right, but they can. I think it's just better to do the research when literally the lame duck is not in the building.
I agree, but here's the Jets, and this is because I want to talk about Joe Douglas's tenure and did he deserve to get fired? Was he a good GM? Did he build a good roster? All that shit. They are just a mess from the top down, man, and it starts with ownership, right? I think they're a mess at every level of their organization. Whether it's Woody Johnson, who is the main culprit. I think the PR section of the place is a mess. I think the players are immature because there's a lack of leadership. They firing Robert Saleh, we talked about it in the moment, said this is an overreaction. This is a crazy overreaction to a close loss to the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm not saying Robert Saleh would have fixed all their issues, but you saw how worse their defense got. There was no leadership added by it, right? Players have been an issue, right? Sauce Gardner's comments on Jeff Ulbrich talking about tackling better and we don't need that. And then he goes out and misses a tackle on a big play.
Bad, man.
They're just a mess. They're a very immature organization. And why did you keep him? That matters, especially when you have an Aaron Rodgers figure there. Why did you keep him around as this lame duck? For what? For what? To piss him off when you go and make the Davante Adams trade, when you bring in, you get the Hassan Reddick deal done. I hate using bad look. Feel like we talk about, it's a bad look. Okay, but is it good or is it bad? How does it affect you going forward? But I do think this affects the Jets negatively going forward because they are looked at as a mess and they've done nothing to quiet that this offseason, right? They could have had a bad season this year and fired Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas at the end and been like, hey, it didn't work, clean slate. Now, now they look like the most undesirable place to go in the NFL. Despite the fact that they actually have some talent on that roster, and on paper, it's a good place to land a GM spot because there's so many pieces in place. Right now, it's I have no desire to go work with that ownership group.
No. Just this organization has just some of the more beautiful timings and the timing of things over the last couple of years. Where it even starts with the timing of hiring Joe Douglas to begin with. You hire him, this organization hired him in the summer after the 2019 draft. So it technically, if you look up Joe Douglas's GM record on Pro Football Reference, he gets accredited for that 7-9 2019 season. That's not his draft class. Them bringing in and signing Le'Veon Bell, that was Mike Maccagnan's free agency decision to sign Le'Veon Bell. That draft class, that was Mike Maccagnan's draft class. You had Adam Gase, who was a brand new head coach. You fired Todd Bowles after the 2018 season. Yeah, Adam Gase, who's a brand new head coach, win a power struggle with Maccagnan, kicks him out before Gase even coaches a game, Then you hire Douglas. So Douglas, winds up organizing a pretty solid roster. But Bobby, where I just think it goes wrong ultimately, and it boils down to two things. Number one, didn't get the coach right. Was paired up with Adam Gase, number one, so he didn't even get a chance to technically choose him, even though they were buddies. They were very, very close. There's a reason why Douglas was brought in when Gase was the head coach, is that those two were very close. And then you hire Robert Saleh, who's not much of a leader, and you can't get a quarterback. I mean, really, because this is a team that has talent, that has pieces. And in a way, you kind of feel bad for Joe Douglas and going out like this and being, pushed to the side over the last month when he's organized a pretty solid roster. But at the end of the day, GM is, along with picking talent, the two most important things you could do is you got to get quarterback right. He didn't do, and you got to get the coach right, which he very, very much did not do.
But even that, like, Robert Saleh wasn't the right coach. I don't view Robert Saleh as this, like, awful coach, right? Like,
Just not the right coach. I don't think he's the right. Wasn't the right coach. Was not the right
Sure,
coach.
but you saw how good he got that defense going, and they went 7-9 with or 7-10 twice with, like, bottom three quarterback play. Here's where Joe Douglas, I think, went wrong. Well, his drafting, I feel like his drafting gets a little bit overrated. Like, his 2020 class was terrible, right? You come out of, the first three rounds with Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, Ashton Davis, and Jabari Zuniga. I mean, Zuniga, I don't think even made it to the initial 53. Ashton Davis is still there, actually, but not very good. Mims, we know he, didn't accomplish anything. Becton, injuries, but he was kind of very immature and didn't take stuff serious. And then got Bryce Hall in the 5th round, but everyone else there was bad. 2021, let me pull up. You get Zach Wilson. That's obviously your biggest miss right there, right? That's a big reason why he's fired. Elijah Vera Tucker, really good, but he got injured. Elijah Moore is not very good. Michael Carter, the running back, not very good. And then you get some guys that can contribute.
I will say, Jamie and Sherwood being that 5th round pick and emerging at linebacker this year, that kind of doesn't save that draft class. But getting AVT and getting Jamie and Sherwood out of there, Michael Carter the second's a good player. It was a solid player for them. They should have never cut Jason Pinnock. I think that makes that draft class a little bit better. But I mean, you can't.
But he nailed it the next year.
Yeah, he nailed it the next year.
And we had one of the best draft. Like, when we look back at the last 5 years, that draft class might be the best. You get Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson the first round. I know Sauce hasn't had a great year, but that's an awesome class. Breece Hall in the 2nd, Max Mitchell, who's like a swing guy for them, and then Michael Clemens in the 4th round, who's a contributor for them, but he hasn't lived up to the big role. So I actually think he's built a good roster. I think the issue is missing on Zach Wilson, and I'm not going to blame him for going out and getting Aaron Rodgers, but what I will is they cower to Aaron Rodgers too much. Whether that's signing Alan Lazard and Mike Williams and all the bullshit that, the main one being Nate Hackett, right? Firing Mike LaFleur for Nate Hackett is a huge mistake. Mike LaFleur is a better offensive play caller. Nate Hackett might be the worst. But they're just a mess. Like, you take away Nate Hackett's, play caller duties, but keep him on the coaching staff. They're just a mess. Jeff Ulbrich was not ready for the interim head coach. I view their mess as more Woody Johnson than Joe Douglas. But at the end of the day, I mean, they went 2-14, 4-13, 7-10, 7-10, and now 3-8. But I think Joe Douglas actually built a pretty good roster. He just got quarterback wrong, missed on some drafts, and cowered to Aaron Rodgers too much.
The other part of the timing piece and the timing point that I was talking about. Okay, so how he was hired, just bad timing on the organization's part, and then the second piece of this is, who would have thought, man? Who would have thought? This is why when Jets fans call up WFAN, they'll yell and scream that the team is cursed. I almost can't even dismiss it. 4 plays into the season, into last year, and Aaron Rodgers goes down, and you have to turn to Zach Wilson that you wanted nothing to do with. You benched the previous year. You had players wearing the Tim Boyle shirts and everything like that.
Mike White
shirts. Tim Boyle was just signed to the Giants roster. That's why he's on my mind.
They didn't know how to run an organization. I thought Joe Douglas something I thought even last year, can't blame them for Aaron Rodgers getting hurt. But we said why are they keeping Zach Wilson around?
Yeah.
This does we talk
They wanted
you
nothing to do
no
with him.
conviction. This guy, you basically kicked him to the curb and said you hate him. You kept him around as your backup. Why didn't you take a backup QB more serious? And you go sign Alan Lazard, who's been a performer. He actually can perform halfway decent with Aaron Rodgers, but that's not a reason to sign a guy to that contract. But they're just, I just think it's a very not immature, but they're dysfunctional. They're a dysfunctional organization. Yeah. And I think Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, Aaron Rodgers contributed to it. But the main culprit is obviously Woody and his brother, Chris Johnson.
Yeah. Can you believe it's this bad though?
Yes. No.
I can't believe it's this bad, man.
I saw a world where the Jets go 7-10, 8-9, and things just don't go their way.
And that would have been a disappointment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I did not see it going this bad.
What does Rodgers have
here's
a worse?
The thing. I don't think it goes as bad if they don't fire Robert Saleh.
Does Rodgers have a worse winning percentage than Zach Wilson as a starter?
Yes. And Sam Darnold too.
It's unbelievable. I picked the Jets to win 12 games. I thought the Jets were going to get to the AFC Championship game this year. That was the expectations, man. I can't believe it. You almost can. You can believe it because this is the Jets. This is what they do. But Rodgers is out. Everybody's going to be out. I mean, I'm even thinking about trading away pieces and acquiring picks and there is no window. I don't know what's next, man.
Now, here's the thing. If they weren't such a dysfunctional organization, this would be a good job. You have a lot of young talent on this team, and the quarterback is going to open up. I think they can have. I don't know what they're going to do with Aaron Rodgers. This may be part of keeping him for another year. I don't know what's going to happen there, but it is a talented roster. But it's just a dysfunctional franchise overall. So
Yeah, Rodgers is done.
They listen to him too. Like, how do you even go with Rodgers when a lot of their issues are his doing?
Right.
Like
and he hasn't
Nate
even
Hackett
played well.
Being example number one. Yeah, and he can't move as well. I think he's played worse, down the stretch, even with adding Devontae Adams. They've just been a mess. They're just a dysfunctional franchise, and it sucks for them because this was supposed to be the year. They're just a masterclass in doing the dumbest shit possible at all times. All right, Justin, why don't you talk to us about something, and then we'll get into our mid-season defensive All-Pros. I
will talk to you about something. It's just those Jets. Tough conversation to have without just throwing your hands up in the air or screaming or hooting or hollering. So that's honestly what they make you want to do. Grab your favorite team's jersey and some snacks and head to the couch for another Sunday of action-packed football. And get even closer to the action each Sunday with our partners at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers, you're going to bet just $5. You will get $150 bonus bets if your bet wins when you use our code FOOTBALLTODAY. Staying on the action, use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot and an even bigger payout. I love my parlays. Add some more legs. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use promo code FOOTBALLTODAY. Bet $5 on any wager. Get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code FOOTBALLTODAY. Only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. You will be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. Defensive mid-season All-Pro, even though it's not mid-season, it's like 2/3 season, but we've been wanting to do this for episode for a while and haven't been able to do it. Defensive end, Justin. It all starts with up front when it comes to defensive players. I feel like there's a lot of competition for this one, so we're doing first team and second team. We're doing 4 D linemen, 2 defensive ends, 2 defensive tackles, 2 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks, 2 safeties, keeping it simple. We only have 10 players on the field, but that's okay. Justin, who is your first team defensive ends?
So I'm going with edge rushers here. That's the proper name. Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt.
TJ Watt, okay.
I have an honorable mention as Nick Bosa. I had a hard time between Nick Bosa and TJ Watt. You can just
put them on. Did you put together a second team or no?
I did not. I have honorable mentions for my first and
okay. I have second teams. I put Myles Garrett in there.
Yeah, his win rate and he's dominating in win rate now that Aiden
I
Hutchinson's
watch him
out.
play.
Yeah.
I watch him play, and it is to me, it's the best defensive end in football consistently. Like, I don't know how he does it. Like, it's magical, the type of shit he does. And just because the sack total isn't great this year doesn't mean I'm gonna ding him for it. Like, I watch him and I'm like, this is the best two-way player in the NFL. And then Trey Hendrickson, I mean, you just can't keep him. I mean, there's the most sacks in the NFL, total pressures, most tackles for a loss. He's second in win rate after Myles Garrett when you exclude Aiden Hutchinson. It's a damn shame that the Bengals have what could be a defensive player of the year in Trey Hendrickson, one of the best offenses in football, and they just suck.
It is a damn shame. It's pretty cool to see Trey Hendrickson, white guy out there with those long white sleeves and the dark visor, just running around kicking ass and dominating, man.
And he does it against good tackles too, right?
Yeah.
Like, he lines
just
up
did it on Sunday Night Football.
Like, there's not a ton of great right tackles in the NFL. There's a pretty good amount of good left tackles in the NFL, and he wins against them, right?
Yeah.
And he lines up solely on the left tackle, where, you mentioned TJ Watt. He lines up solely on the right tackle. Like, he never, faces, the highest paid guys in the NFL. For second team, I did put Nick Bosa. I put Andrew Van Ginkel in there.
Oh, hello.
I mean, he's fourth in sacks for edge players, first in tackles for a loss, and he has 2 interceptions. Like, he's having a phenomenal season for Minnesota. If we did a draft of, like, drafting the players of who we want, would Van Ginkel go top 4? No. But, like, I think he is a huge part of what's making that Brian Flores Vikings defense go.
Yeah, and in a similar mindset, like, if I had to go with the second team, Nick Bosa would be one, and then maybe even one of the Denver edge rushers in a similar mindset, like a Nick Bonito, a Jonathan Cooper, right? I feel like some of those guys serve a very similar purpose as Van Ginkel. I think Benito's more talented. He's the guy with the most talent out of all of them. But in this blitz heavy scheme, like doing those little things right, like Van Ginkel does, he's having a solid year.
Yeah, and he just goes out there and wins consistently. So he's playing well. TJ Watt was the guy that got left off for me, but Nick Bosa, Nick Bosa has been awesome this year. You really find Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, and TJ Watt, right? They're 3 of the 5 every single year.
Yeah.
And I think Watt Watt's box score stats are really good. I think his can get better as the year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on my first team by the end of the year.
And what really put him as my first team right now is that his run defense is phenomenal. That's what separated. Like, again, it was between Bosa and Watt for me. What separated Watt was that his run defense and some of his numbers there are just they're just better.
Alrighty. All right, defensive tackle. What do you got?
All right, Dexter Lawrence, I think, is the clear number 1 nose tackle.
Has to be. I mean, he's second in the NFL in sacks, and he's a nose tackle. He gets double teamed more than like anybody in NFL history. He's a beast. Like, he's the only thing holding the Giants' run defense together, even though it's not held together very well. Just easy money, right? If the Giants were better, he might actually get Defensive Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, I think he would be in consideration of it. And he doesn't have a sack over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but Giants did have a bye week. I talked to him today, and he referenced that he was feeling really good. So that's good. He's like, the rest of the NFL let me rest up. That's not good. So he did reference that.
We obviously watched Dexter Lawrence a little more closely. He hasn't been able. He has gotten he was always double teamed a lot. I feel like they've ramped up this year, where he's not able to get like the total sacks, hits, and pressures every single week like he did the last 2 years. But it's just like, it's so clear he's dominant. And did you pick Chris Jones as your number 2? I thought there was good competition for number 2.
He's my honorable mention, Chris Jones. If I had to go with who was more valuable to their team, it would be Chris Jones. But I doubled up on my Pittsburgh Steelers, Bobby. And I went Cam Hayward.
So Cam Hayward was second team for me. Chris Jones has 4 sacks, Cam Hayward 6.5. But Chris Jones to me has 13 total more pressures. The win rate, Chris Jones and Cam Hayward's got him there. I think the stats are so similar to where I'm like, I think Chris Jones is the clearly better player, that I went with Chris Jones. But Cam Hayward's having a phenomenal year, and he's first guy off the bench as my second team All-Pro.
Yeah, and I think the writing was on the wall for Cam Hayward. I don't know if anybody saw the total resurgence year. The Steelers gave him that extension. I don't know if anybody saw this fully coming, but the writing was on the wall. Like, even though the sack production was down last year, the hits were still there, the pressures were still there. So the writing was kind of on the wall for the overall production to go up for Cam Hayward this year. So I'm glad that he's producing well for Pittsburgh. Anybody that kind of doubted him, screw you. They gave him the extension, well deserved. Cam Hayward.
People were calling him washed.
Yeah, no, he was not that. Doing.
But he has the second most defensive tackles or sacks at defensive tackle now. Eighth in total pressure, highest. Second highest win rate. He's been a beast. And I put Zach Allen as my my other second team defensive tackle for the Denver Broncos.
Right on.
So, Justin, defensive player of the year usually comes from these two groups. Who do you think is defensive player of the year, though, right now? I don't feel like there's a clear.
No. Part of me still wants to say Aiden Hutchinson, but that's not. Because that's how impressive.
Yeah,
what
that's
Aiden
who we
Hutchinson
voted for
doing.
when we did our award show. I was like, yeah, he got injured last week, but this week he's still my defensive player of the year.
And he's still like top 15 at a lot of these pass rushing categories, which we really did get robbed of probably what was going to be one of the best seasons in in decades, and in literally decades. Aiden Hutchinson was on pace for that. I would give it to it would Trey Hendrickson, guy that just has the guy that's leading in sacks, right?
Is he going to get it on a bad defense though?
So then again, it feels like if you were to go over to DraftKings, like TJ Watt is just always up there, and I feel like TJ Watt probably has the best odds because he's always towards 20, almost at 20 sacks every year. And the Steelers aren't just good; they're like good.
Yeah, their defense is leading them to wins.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. I don't think there's a corner.
So I would, if you ask me who's going to win it, TJ Watt. Right now, who should win it? It's Trey Hendrickson.
Yes, I agree with that.
All right, linebacker. Now this is where my second guy, Fred Warner, first team. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of strong takes, so I went first team Fred Warner. That one was easy. Like, I've watched him play. He's nuts. He's having, maybe his best year. Jack Campbell for the Detroit Lions. I put second as this other first team All-Pro. And then I put JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, second team, and Devin Lloyd for the Jags second team.
Can I tell you who I have as right next to Fred Warner? And this is based off of, I have watched this guy play. Maybe I haven't watched a ton of JOK this year, even though if you're a listener to the show, you know how much I love JOK. He's playing 92% of the snaps, which that was my main ask for the Cleveland Browns. Hey, let's not play this guy that gets 20 tackles for loss. 76%, let's bump that up. So they're doing that this year. Obviously, Roquan Smith's a dude. He's a dog. He got hurt. He got hurt last week. But
I think he's been playing bad, honestly, this year too. Roquan.
The guy that I have next to Fred Warner, it's Zach Bond for the Philadelphia Eagles.
I thought about putting him in here. I need to pay more attention to him though.
He makes impact plays, game-changing plays, left and right. Whether they're tackles, whether it's pass deflections, whether it's plays and coverage. Like, he flies all over, and I think it was Vic Fangio that, I think he was like an off-ball linebacker, like an outside linebacker for the majority of his career so far, and then they converted him to off-ball interior linebacker, and that is the best decision that anybody has made in his NFL career so far. It saved his NFL career, where he went from a guy that he's a decent player, journeyman will play sometimes, to full-time starter, impact player, and I think he deserves to be up there with the top interior linebackers in the NFL right now. Just makes impact plays every week.
Yeah, Vic Fangio's gotten the absolute most out of him, and he definitely could have been in there for me. Corner, man, this is where I get a little excited because I feel like there's a lot of ones. First team, Patrick Surtain Jr. for the Denver Broncos. And I know he hasn't been as dominant the last few games, but Jalen Johnson, who I think is the best corner in the NFL for the Chicago Bears. But Surtain, man, he's giving up 142 yards in 10 games and 18 catches, while also having 3 interceptions and 2 pass breakups. Like, he's giving up 14 yards per game. Again, like, I feel like we need to stop making Defensive Player of the Year essentially only a pass rusher award, because Patrick Surtain is making as good of an argument for it as anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, I think out of corners with at least 50% of the minimum threshold of snaps played on PFF for their premium stats, he's allowed the least amount of yards, and I don't even think it's even close, man. So there are some stats that we talked about earlier on. I think it was one of our award shows that we did a couple weeks ago. Where it said Pat Surtain, like they are allowing him to shadow number one corners. It's not just pick a side, play a side. He's shadowing these number one corners. He's following these guys. He's dominating them. He's making plays on the football. He has some interceptions on the ledger this year too. Pretty sure one of them is a pick six. I mean, Pat Surtain's one of the biggest reasons why this Broncos defense is where it is. You know, obviously they have that pass rush. They get after it up front, but you know, you got to have the guys in the back that are going to hold up, and Pat Surtain's holding up these number one wide receivers.
Yep. And then I put Jalen Johnson as my other one. I mean, he's best in the NFL in snaps per reception allowed. You know, again, not quite as dominant as the last 2 years, but that's like his last 2 years were unbelievably ridiculous. He has 2 interceptions. That Bears defense actually is still really good, despite the fact that they continue to lose games over there. You know who I had a hard time leaving off, though?
Who?
Kenyon Mitchell.
Oh.
Who, by the way, I'm in love with our draft takes this year, where I'm like, Jared Verse is my number 1 defensive player in the draft, and Kenyon Mitchell is my number 2.
Yeah.
Like, and they were like the 2 guys who I viewed as worthy of top 10 picks in the NFL draft, and I'm still pissed off at the Atlanta Falcons that they didn't draft Jared Verse when they're going for it now, and they have the worst pass rush in the NFL, and it allows them to be such a piece of shit defense because they can't rush the passer at all. Yes, it makes me angry, but hey, Michael Penix, you know, when he's 27 and gets that first start, it's gonna be nasty. Hopefully Penix is great. It makes me eat my words. But Mitchell's been nuts, dude. Now, his first 4 games, 215 yards allowed, 14 receptions. The last 6 games, 78 yards on 9 receptions. He has 7 pass breakups on the year. No touchdowns allowed, no interceptions. So he's not first team All-Pro right now, because it's how did you do the whole year? And I thought the first 4 games, there's a lot of good moments, but there still was some, you know, bad plays that he gave up in coverage. But he looked like he belonged, absolutely. He's become really good down the stretch. And I think Jared Verse is going to be the runaway defensive rookie of the year just because of the nature of that award, and we look at the pass rushers first. But Kenyon Mitchell's having a phenomenal rookie year.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't put him at the top, like that at the top. Like the second guy that I have is Marlon Humphrey from the Ravens.
He was on my second team All-Pro as well. 5 interceptions.
Yeah, five interceptions, a QB rating of 55.6. It's one of the lowest in the league. 32 catches on the year, 313 yards. The next guy that I have Derek Stingley. You know, got a chance to watch him on national television going up against CeeDee Lamb. I think he's actually the lowest in quarterback ratings so far this year. Yeah, 49.7. It's actually him and Kamari Lassiter as 1 and 2. Then Marlon Humphrey is 3 with the lowest passer ratings allowed out of corners that have played at least around 250-ish snaps. So I have Derek Stingley 2. 3, because I have Pat Surtain, Marlon Humphrey, Derek Stingley, and then I have an honorable mention of I love the way that Zion McCollum has played. I know he's had some bad moments this year, but Zion McCollum has had some really, really good games. He's been really physical too on a Bucs defense that asks you to be physical. Similar with the Broncos, right? You have a team that's blitzing up front, a team that wants to be aggressive, and you need a corner back there that's going to take care of business, and Zion McCollum has done that.
We got to go quick. First team safety.
Oh.
What could have been the New York Giants safety duo. Instead, we got fucking Deontay Banks and Jason Pinnock. Xavier McKinney and Brian Branch.
Same as me.
McKinney's 6 interceptions, second most. Brian Branch, most forced incompletions, most pass breakups, third most interceptions. Crazy in the run game. Makes big hits as a tackler. Brian Branch, I will never get over the NFL. Like, he is going to be my perfect example every year of when we downgrade these safeties. Go like, look at the 40 time. And they did it with Xavier McKinney. They did it with Kyle Hamilton. And it's like, watch him play football. Safety is a mental position, and he's there. And then second team, I mean, Kirby Joseph from the Lions as well. He has the most interceptions in the NFL at 7. And then I know Jesse Bates doesn't have the great stats, but, you know, reference when I talked about how bad the Falcons pass rush is, he's still just as dominant. I put Jesse Bates as my second team.
Yeah, Falcons don't allow a lot of big plays, so Jesse Bates is good. And my first team is the exact same. Brian Branch and Xavier McKinney, and let the record show that in that year's draft, I liked Brian Branch more than you did.
Nope, you didn't. He was the guy I wanted there.
Nope.
So I wish Brian Branch and Xavier McKinney was the Giants safety duo so bad. right now. So freaking bad. But it isn't. So we'll see you guys on Friday with Chris Rose. Until then, that is football today.